Good morning! Welcome to Sunday School. We're doing Joseph Part 3 today, from rock bottom all the way to the top. Because Joseph goes from rock bottom all the way to the top. Spoiler alert for a 1,000-year-old story, I guess. So we're going to summarize Genesis chapter 40 because this Joseph story is very long, and 40 I think is the least important one. Basically, Joseph is in jail with two other people that Pharaoh is mad at, the chief baker and the chief wine steward, and both of them have dreams that Joseph interprets. Joseph interprets that Pharaoh is going to forgive the wine steward and execute the baker. Which is unfortunate for the baker, I suppose. And Joseph's interpretations at the end of chapter 40, they end up coming true. The baker dies. The wine steward is forgiven, and Joseph asks the wine steward, like, hey, will you put in a good word for me with Pharaoh so that maybe I can be freed from prison? And then the wine steward forgets about him. And then Joseph ends up in prison for 2 years. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into Genesis 41. I'll do my best to read it fast because it's kind of long and I want this video to be short. 2 years later, Pharaoh dreamed that he was standing near the Nile. In front of him, 7 healthy-looking fattened cows climbed up out of the Nile and grazed on the reeds. Just then, 7 other cows, terrible-looking and scrawny, climbed up out of the Nile after them and stood beside them on the bank of the Nile. The terrible-looking scrawny cows devoured the 7 healthy-looking fattened cows. Then Pharaoh woke up. He went back to sleep and had a second dream, in which 7 ears of grain, full and healthy, grew on a single stalk. Just then 7 ears of grain, scrawny and scorched by the east wind, sprouted after them, and scrawny ears swallowed up the full and well-formed ears. Then Pharaoh woke up and realized it was a dream. In the morning he was disturbed, and summoned all of Egypt's religious experts and all of its advisors. Pharaoh described his dreams to them, but they couldn't interpret them for Pharaoh. Then the chief wine steward spoke to Pharaoh. Oh, he remembered Joseph. 2 years later. Today I've just remembered my mistake. Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker under arrest with the commander of the royal guard. We both dreamed one night, he and I, and each of our dreams had its own interpretation. A young Hebrew man, aka that's Joseph, a servant of the commander of the royal guard, was with us. We described our dreams to him and he interpreted our dreams for us, giving us an interpretation for each dream. His interpretations came true exactly. Pharaoh restored me to my position but hanged him being the baker. So Pharaoh summoned Joseph, and they quickly brought him from the dungeon. He shaved, changed clothes, and appeared before Pharaoh. They had to clean him up and make him presentable before he could be seen by the Pharaoh, because he'd been in prison for 2 years and was probably scraggly and looked terrible. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream, but no one can interpret it. Then I heard that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, it's not me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable response. And then Pharaoh describes his dream again. We're just going to skip that part because it's the same thing that we just read. Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh actually had one dream. God has announced to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 healthy cows are 7 years, and the 7 healthy ears of corn are 7 years. It's actually one dream. The 7 thin and frail cows climbing up after them are 7 years. The 7 thin ears of grain scorched by the east wind are 7 years of famine. It's just as I told Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are now coming throughout the entire land of Egypt. After them 7 years of famine will appear, and all of that abundance in the land of Egypt will be forgotten. The famine will devastate the land. No one will remember the abundance in the land because the famine that follows will be so very severe. The dream occurred to Pharaoh twice because God has determined to do it, and God will make it happen soon. Joseph's rise to power. Now Pharaoh, this is still Joseph talking. Now Pharaoh should find an intelligent, wise man and give him authority over the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh should appoint administrators over the land and take 1/5 of all the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. During the good years that are coming, they should collect all such food and store the grain under Pharaoh's control, protecting the food in the cities. This food will be reserved for the 7 years of famine to follow in the land of Egypt so that the land won't be ravaged by the famine. This advice seemed wise to Pharaoh and all his servants, and Pharaoh said to his servants, Can we find a man with more God-given gifts than this one? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since God has made all this known to you, no one is as intelligent and wise as you are. You will be in charge of my kingdom, and all my people will obey your command.
Gotta keep going fast. Only as the enthroned king will I be greater than you. Pharaoh said to Joseph, Note this, I've given you authority over the entire land of Egypt. Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. He dressed him in linen clothes, and he put a gold necklace around his neck. He put Joseph on the chariot of his second-in-command, and everyone in front of him cried out, "Attention!" So Pharaoh installed him over the entire land of Egypt. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh. No one will do anything or go anywhere in all the land of Egypt without your permission." Pharaoh renamed Joseph Zaphanath-Paneah and married him to Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of Heliopolis. Then Joseph assumed control of the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he began to serve Pharaoh, Egypt's king, when he left Pharaoh's court and traveled through the entire land of Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. He collected all the food during the 7 years of abundance in the land of Egypt and stored the food in cities. In each city he stored the food from the fields surrounding it. Joseph amassed grain like the sand of the sea. There was so much that he stopped trying to measure it because it was beyond measuring. Before the years of famine arrived, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of Heliopolis, gave birth to 2 sons for Joseph. Joseph named the oldest son Manasseh because he said, "God has helped me forget all my troubles and everyone in my father's household." He named the second Ephraim because he said, "God has given me the children in the land where I have been treated harshly." The 7 years of abundance in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had said. The famine struck every country, but the entire land of Egypt had bread. When the famine ravaged the entire land of Egypt and the people pleaded to Pharaoh for bread, Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph, do whatever he tells you." The famine covered every part of the land, and Joseph opened all of the granaries and sold grain to the Egyptians. In the land of Egypt, the famine became more and more severe. Every country came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because in every country the famine had also become more severe. And that's that.
I think that is the fastest I have ever read a scripture passage. I like how Pharaoh basically just said to Joseph, here's my stuff, do my job for me, okay, thanks, bye. Let's look at fun facts and context, because those are things that we look at when we read scripture. Geography time. If you all didn't know, Egypt is called the gift of the Nile because its economy and its livelihood are all a result of the Nile River flowing through and creating a space in the desert where life could grow. Trivia facts. The Nile is also the longest river in the world, and it's about 20 to 30 million years old. Very old. Another fun fact for trivia knowledge, that the Nile River Valley is only 5% of the landmass of Egypt, but it's home to 95% of Egypt's population. So here's a map of the Nile. There's 2 branches that started out, and it flows north up into the Mediterranean Sea. And then a satellite view of it, you can see that tiny little strip of green where the river flows through and creates a space for life to grow, and then you can see that that little bitty strip of green is surrounded by desert. And so of course, if you're gonna live there, just looking at it, I mean, I would pick the green place over the desert place. And then we've got some fun facts. Fun fact 1, Joseph always gives the credit to God when he interprets dreams. This is important because Joseph's God, our God, is a different God than the ones that Egypt worshipped, revered, and depended on. So by doing this and continually giving the credit to his God, our God, Joseph is kind of being subversive and making sure that Pharaoh knows that it is God who's giving Joseph his power, and that maybe Pharaoh might consider respecting God. Fun fact 2, Joseph is given fancy stuff to wear again, kind of like the robe that he used to have from his father Jacob. So he gets linen clothing, which is what powerful Egyptians wore. He gets a gold necklace, and he gets a signet ring that is a symbol of his authority. If you don't know what a signet ring is, it's basically it's a fancy ring that has a little seal with a symbol on it, and you can stamp it onto stuff. If you're writing a letter or something, you drip some wax and go with your ring, and then people know it's from you and that you're special because of your ring. Fun fact number 3, the name that Pharaoh gives Joseph, Zaphanath-Paneah, let's hope I pronounced that correctly, means God speaks, he lives, or sustainer of life. Which is cool because Joseph, basically with his interpretation of dreams, saves Egypt. Add that to your resume. His new wife's name, Asenath, means she who belongs to Neith. Neith is an Egyptian goddess. So it was just interesting to me that it's an interreligious marriage. People of 2 different faiths are married. My favorite part of this whole chapter is Joseph's attitude. Apparently even 2 years in prison can't take his sass away. He just seems so done. Just so done. in this chapter, because when Pharaoh summons him to interpret dreams, obviously feeling salty that he was forgotten by the chief wine guy who he specifically asked to talk to Pharaoh to see if he could be freed. Joseph is just like, oh, you finally remembered me, that I exist, that I've just been, chilling in jail for 2 years. Thanks. I also noticed, Joseph might be a little more humble now, because if you remember back in the first part of Joseph's story, he kept, puffing himself up in front of all his brothers and being like, I'm gonna rule over all of you, and I'm so special and cool. And I think he maybe has finally learned that that kind of attitude gets him beat up and sold into slavery in Egypt. So maybe Joseph has a little more humility and maybe learned some kind of lesson, and so when he's interpreting dreams and stuff, and they keep trying to exalt Joseph and tell him how great he is, Joseph is like, nope, it's God, God is doing this, God interprets the dreams, I'm just here. That just seems like humility to me. That's the story of Joseph, part 3. I hope you'll join us next week. We'll do part 4. Hope you all are having a good week, staying safe and healthy. I hope you're doing okay at school. And remember that from 3 to 5 p.m. on Tuesdays to Thursdays, I'm available to talk to if you just want to ask questions either about this lesson or about life or about homework. I might be able to help you. I'm really good at English. I don't really remember any math I ever learned. The Virtual Youth Loft is here for you and your questions. They may not all be answerable. Youth group is on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Go to fumcor.org/youth to get that link. Join us for a devotion and some games. I love you all. Be good people. Be kind humans. Bye!